Hi, my name's Natasha and I'm an assistant curator here at the Museum of London. Thank you for joining us for our latest instalment of London's fashion alphabet. Today we're looking at the letter F, and F stands for flowers. Specifically, I'd like to look at artificial flowers, and I'd like to show you today one of my favourite bonnets from the late Victorian period. This bonnet was actually made in Paris and came over to London. It is just so lavishly decorated with artificial flowers. So we have violets and we have these beautiful roses, some made out of plain silk and some with some velvet. And then it's got this extravagant wire structure covered in ruched pink chiffon with some diamante clasps. It's asymmetrical, which was quite common in the day. So it would be worn high up, kind of on the back of the head. Artificial flowers were used by the whole of society for decorating their bonnets and hats. It was a big business, however, it did have a dark side to it, and a lot of the artificial flowers were made using sweatshop labour. So there were simple components that could be done usually by women and children in the home. We have one image in our collection which shows this being done by a family in Hoxton in 1910. Work at home around about the turn of the century in 1903 would earn someone 4 to 5 shillings a week, which in today's money is about 22 to 27 pounds. Spring was when artificial flowers were most in demand. Obviously the change in weather, the start of the London season where people were being presented at court, as well as other society events were taking place. So there was a lot of competition between flower makers. They would all rush to the West End stores when fashions arrived over from Paris and copy the designs, and then there'd be a race to see who could produce the quickest copies. But what's interesting to know is how these flowers were made, because it was a really labour-intensive process. First of all, you'd take the fabric and it would be cut into various flower and leaf shapes that were required. And they would have several layers of fabric placed down, and they would go on top of it and be struck with a mallet before mechanisation to cut out all these shapes. And then after that would be the dyeing process. Petals and leaves would be either dipped in bowls of dye, or they could be painted by hand. Following this, we had to turn like this flat piece of dyed material into something that looked like an exquisite flower. So the fabric would be placed inside the mould, and then this would be placed on top and put under a press to clearly imprint the vein pattern onto the fabric. So that would add the texture onto the material. Then you needed to shape it to look like a petal, and they would use a range of tools, and this one's here's just a ball-shaped petal tool, which they would heat the ball over a bit of a gas flame, and then on a heat-resistant pad they would press the flower into the concave shape that you see. They worked from the centre of the flower out to build the flower up. It was then mounted on a wire stem that was covered in fabric, and then kind of artistically put into sprays or kind of sent off to pop onto bonnets and things like that. After the First World War, the artificial flower industry suffered. The fussiness of Victorian fashions disappeared and the industry never quite recovered. So I guess this bonnet is a nice example of kind of the heyday of artificial flower making. Thank you so much for joining me today to look at the letter F. Swipe up if you want to learn more about our collection. We've got so many more objects online you can explore. And please tune in next time to see what G will stand for in London's fashion alphabet.